Hey, sports fans! Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show. Coming at you, as always, a little bit earlier, though, on a Monday midday on the West Coast, and as always, joined by Andrew Combo Sal to discuss the latest and the greatest in the NBA. Combo, how's it going, my man?
All is well. How are you?
All is okay. Had an interesting, experience last night watching this Warriors Mavericks game. Interesting. I got something interesting for you.
What's up?
The Warriors make the most passes per game, and the Mavericks make the least passes per game in the NBA this year.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. The Mavs play heliocentric type offense, and the Warriors play read and react type offense.
Okay, so it's interesting because if you watch the game, you might not feel that way. I'm in the middle of a video right now talking about the threes, right? Because this game, they broke the record for most threes made in a game between two teams, 45. It was wild, right? And the Mavericks had control of the game almost the entire time. And every time the Warriors would kind of claw back and they were from shooting some threes, they get like within three toward the end, and they just could not sustain it. It didn't feel like they were going to sustain it and get close. But when you watch the way they were generating the threes, this is an interesting discussion we need to have about why the ratings are down and whether or not it really is just about like all the chucking of the 3-point shots.
Will we ever actually find out why the ratings are down? Like, will we ever have a solid answer, or it'll just always be hearsay?
The problem is that the NBA doesn't have any incentive to tell us, right? They don't want to get us behind the curtain. So I'm sure that if you have enough insight and you're behind the curtain over there, you are seeing exactly where it's dropping off, right?
Yeah, I just feel like somebody comes up with the idea, and then we keep just piggybacking off that, and everybody, it just is like a roller coaster, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, listen, I don't think anybody's going to deny that the illegal streaming has an effect, right? People do not want to spend money, and I don't blame them. It's really expensive for.
But wasn't that always around?
Well, I mean, streaming. Okay, it's been around long enough. Like streaming's been around since what, like 2012.
Yeah, I mean, when I was playing overseas, I mean, that's how. I'm
When
not
was
saying
that?
I did it because we're online here, but I'm saying a lot of people were streaming
When was
online
that?
when they were
What
playing
year?
overseas. I mean, 2008 to 2017, I played, and I remember a lot of it during that time.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine by like 2011, 2012 is kind of when the streaming started happening, I think. So, yeah, you want to compare before that to now, and we're seeing like, it's hard to know exactly what the ratings are. It's whether or not we can trust all these numbers, but they're down, right? I don't think no one's really contesting that. Whether they're down 50%, are they down 10%? It's hard because they also want to look at things like NFL. And the NFL is not fair. You can't compare them because they play on one day, basically a week, and it's a non-work day. And so people can build their entire, schedules around watching these games. It's just not an apples to apples comparison. But it's an interesting discussion because I think that the streaming thing has got to be part of it. Again, League Pass is expensive. I think it's like what, $250 a year. So that's expensive. If you have HBO or you have what's Amazon, like streaming Prime, I think you can get access to some of the games, but that's not cheap either. So, in the comments, let us know what you guys think, because it could be that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the other thing, because there's been a lot of chatter on Twitter the last couple of days about this, and I kind of weighed in. Do you think it's the refereeing?
No, I mean, I feel like they've been reffing it in a way where we're allowing more of a physical style of basketball, and we even seen the importance of certain players be boosted because of this style, whether it be Lou Dort, whether it be Jalen Suggs, who's had an emergence lately, Dyson Daniels. I think some of these players improve seasons is not only because they improved, but because the way the game is being officiated.
So Dyson Daniels is getting more steals because they're not calling fouls on him?
Well, he's just more important because he could rough you up a little bit now.
Fascinating. So you feel like they're letting them play a little bit more physically on the margin. I don't think it's a lot, but a little bit, don't you think is what you're saying?
Oh, it's a lot, because remember all the fouls that Trey and James Harden used to get?
Yeah.
There's none of that anymore. There is, I mean, we don't think of this as the hand check era, but there's some hand checking going on. Not Derek Harper's type hand checking, but more than a few years ago.
All right. Well, shout out to Derek Harper reference. Nice. Okay. And here's the other problem is anybody that wants to weigh in with their feelings is valid, right? Whatever you feel and why you have turned off the game is a valid reason. Doesn't mean it's the entire reason, but we can't like negate all of this. And so I've seen people like, I think what we get into trouble and it's hard to have a conversation is when someone's like, no, you are absolutely wrong. It is this. When in reality, it's like, oh, I totally get why you feel that way, why you turned it off. I turned it off for some other reason, but here's the thing about the refereeing, which is interesting because the traveling comes up a lot. And if you followed me at all on Twitter, you would know that I spend an inordinate amount of time trying to explain to people why by rule, it is not a travel. And that why you think it's a travel is because you got wrong information when you were growing up about like the one-footed step through, for instance. Anthony Edwards did one, and he was pivoting. Then he stepped on the non-pivot foot, lifted the pivot foot in the air, and shot the ball. And everyone's like, that's a travel. When it turns out, not only is it not a travel in the NBA, it's not a travel at any level. But that fight is still happening. We still haven't been able to convince. I had someone who says he's a ref who refuses to acknowledge that move. Now, the only thing with the Anthony Edwards move was he strung a step back into that. So he's doing a step back, shot fake, step through off 1 foot in there. So what we need to realize is that these guys are amazing athletes, elite shot makers, incredibly skilled footwork people. And that's why they're able to do this. So it might not even look exactly like what you think you do in 8th grade or in high school, but it's within the rules as the NBA and FIBA have them. And people just don't want it. They don't care. You know what I mean? You know that mindset?
Tell me more.
So basically it's like, okay, I think it's a mix. They were told you have to jump off of both feet on a step through. I was told that. I learned that. And when
they also told us we need to jump off the right leg for a left-handed layup, which was wrong.
Guys, that's a really good response. I'm going to save that for the next one people do because, again, this is real. Here's what it comes down to. It comes down to you were in whatever grade, 8th grade, and some coach that you trusted told you something. And to be able to get that out of your head or explain that wasn't right is difficult, right? I get it. I mean, it mirrors politics, it mirrors religion, it mirrors a lot of different things. In terms of,
I guess it's just a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset.
Yeah, exactly. I use rigid, but fixed.
Shouts to Carol Dweck.
Right. And because like for rigid is a little bit more maybe the negative connotation versus fixed. But
in life, it's better to have a growth mindset. We know this.
Yeah. And people who don't, could use a little help, probably in their overall mental state as it is anyway, right? It would, it would help.
You want people to believe they could always get better, right?
Right. Well, because what's the natural reaction? You have to dig in. I'm not wrong. I can't be wrong. I can't admit I'm wrong. Are you kidding? That's weak. Like those are the things that go on very quickly in someone's mind like that. And so even as someone who's a referee, for instance, I really want to just blast him because I can't believe I spent so much time. I sent him all the things to explain how his hold up was the gather step. And he wanted to come to me, at me of all people, and try and insist there is no gather step. And I'm like, we have to actually argue the gather step.
The gather step was a big thing with LeBron at one point, right?
Yeah, with
the crab dribble.
Yeah, that was probably the root of the very beginnings of like understanding how that works. And then it went to Giannis with his 0 steps from the half court line and whatever he was doing. And so, but I thought I had won that battle. I thought we had educated enough people to understand how the rules go. I think another big problem is that somebody else come at me for a long time and just simply wouldn't acknowledge. It was trying to mischaracterize what I was saying was that the rule change that allows a gather step, there is some new language. 09, it came in and they refined it a little bit later. When they did that, people are like, look, they just changed the rules wholeheartely to add the gather step in there to allow this. And my retort is that no, they changed they altered the rule to reflect how they've been calling it for decades before. That's all they did. And they've said that. They've acknowledged it. We have examples of gather steps in the 80s. Not like a ton, but they did them and they were allowed. And as a result, that kind of pushed the baseline for how they call these games all the way through. So they finally had to say, well, you know what? The gather step is the gather step. We got to acknowledge it because we allow it. It's been that way for decades. Guess what? I would say half the layups that I see in high school utilize a gather step. No one bats an eye. Gather 1-2 layup. That's right? Well, that's a gather step when you do it that way, right? And so that's the problem. There's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the rules are at all levels. And why should the NBA suffer in the ratings because of that misunderstanding? You know what I mean?
That can't be the reason why the NBA ratings are suffering. Because
Okay,
of
well,
the
how
travel
many people
rule?
have you seen that argue that the traveling rules are cause people to turn it off? You've seen that, right?
What? Not really, Coach Nick. I've seen a lot of people complain about it. I haven't seen that as a reason for the ratings being down.
I have seen endless tweets in response to this, and you know what? Don't forget, if you want to contribute to the show and have your comment posted on the thing, we'll answer your question. The super chat on YouTube is the way to go. It helps us keep the show going, and I would really appreciate it because we want to hear more from you anyway on this show, for sure. I've seen
Nick, it's the 3-point shot that people are upset about, and the volume of 3-point shots being taken.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Well, save that thought. Save the 3-point shot. We're gonna get there in a second. That's the headline. But before we get there, I just want to say I've seen countless tweets of people thinking that it's like they're traveling everywhere. They don't enforce it. They don't enforce it like they did when I was playing. And so, and ergo, ipso facto, that's why it's bad. And then I can't watch it. When in reality, if you were to watch games from the 90s, like you would turn that off in a second. I would turn it off. And I grew up then. I loved the NBA then. I can't watch a lot of those games. It's horrible. Spacing is horrible. The ball movement is non-existent. There's ISOs. There's like long 2 step backs that get bricked. It's not easy to watch. The defense doesn't rotate like they do now. It's really not the product is, I think it's much better now. But
and I feel like we could also see the bad teams at scale.
Now.
Yeah, I mean, back then you could watch your own team most likely, but you couldn't see all the bad teams around the league. You would see all the best teams on TV, and the others you could maybe read about in the newspaper.
Perfect point. Great point. Because like I remember when I was growing up, I was in the 90s. So Gary Payton gets elected to the Hall of Fame. Now, if you were at that era, like in Chicago where I grew up, for instance, you wouldn't see Gary Payton play very much. I saw him in the finals in '96, and that was, I saw that was up close. I was in those games. I probably saw 3 games during the year, on TNT back then, right? Whatever, and maybe an ABC game or whatever it was, or NBC back then. So it was really difficult. So I remember when he got in the Hall of Fame, I was like, why would Gary Payton get in the Hall of Fame? Now I know he was probably like the greatest defender at his position, so we got to give him that, and that probably gets him in outright because offensively he was fine. He wasn't a really good shooter. He could pass a little bit, he could post up a little bit. There's a lot of guys like that. So offensively, never really spoke to me much. And again, I'm not even sure had he not played as long as he played, would he got in. But the point being, we don't have to get a Gary Payton argument now. The point being is that, yeah, you're right. It was hard to see a lot of other teams, especially like in the other conference. You definitely wouldn't really see much of them. So that's part of it, I guess, as well, right? We can see the bad teams and see more. I don't know.
Here's another thing. I think we could do a better job of marketing the league's best players, like Jokic, like SGA, like Luka Doncic. Wemby's next. Even Anthony Edwards, who he's very marketable, just being Ant. But we're hanging on to this KD, LeBron, Steph thing. And I think they're so great, but people are getting bored of it at this point.
I hear you. And you're right. That's a really great point. And that I guess you can argue David Stern understood better or did a better job with the marketing. And remember, they cascaded that out from Bird, Magic, Jordan, and they were able to open up to Dominique and to, I don't know, Charles Barkley and all the other guys as well. And then that sustained. Whereas I agree. I feel like, SGA is still not a household name. Is he?
No.
Right?
No, not at all. I mean, you're not a household name until your grandma knows about him. Like your grandma knows about Steph and LeBron, and that's maybe about it.
I mean, is it because his name is complicated? No, I don't think so.
Well, first he has to win a championship. That'll help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Barkley never won a championship. Malone didn't, like some of those guys.
Barkley was different. Barkley had some great quotables even back then, right?
And maybe that was it. And SGA doesn't, right? He's
on IG he does with the captions, but verbally not. Yeah, verbally not as much.
Okay, I gotta get my eyes on that because I haven't seen that much. But
he expresses himself through social media, IG captions, and his fashion more than what he says.
Okay. Now let's go to Euro Thunder here because thank you so much, Euro Thunder. Great to see you from Europe with the super chat. Really, really appreciate it. They say I saw a tweet today that the Warriors are 10-10 with Steph and 4-1 without him. it's still a small sample size, if true, but still wild. Now, remember, we got to look at the 4-1, like what those teams were, because if they were, suboptimal teams, that'll have a lot to do with it as well. Because obviously they're better with Steph on the floor. Like, it's not even measurable how much better they are.
Yeah.
But to talk about Steph and talk about LeBron and talk about KD, you're right. The torch needs to be passed. They need to be able to figure out how to market these guys better, I suppose, to get the interest. One of my problems I also have, though, is I swear on any given night, I go to my league pass. I'm like, okay, let's go watch a game. And it's like Charlotte versus, Portland.
And if LaMelo Ball's not playing, man.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Where it's like that. So you'll see like, two teams, not even just one team. Because by the way, if you want to watch a good game and it's one of those teams is the bottom 10 in the league, like you don't want to watch that either.
Trailblazers don't even feel like the Trailblazers don't even feel like they're in the NBA at this point.
Yeah. And so it's like that's got to be a reason to when you're thinking about, especially when you're going to compare the league pass era, right? Because it's hard. You really shouldn't compare eras now because of that. What we said earlier was you simply couldn't get access to those games. You could probably get a VHS tape sent to you once a week. I did that with friends in other countries where as a gift, I sent them, like they'd get like, I'm not even sure they got full games. They probably got some edited version of like, a bunch of games on a VHS tape every week. But other than that, like, you can't compare to like a press of a button and watch a game. So that is part of the problem, I think, as well. So have we finished talking about the refereeing? You don't think that that's an issue at all in terms of why people are turning it off?
I mean, I think they fixed the physicality thing. I don't think because people could travel now more, or people perceive that players travel more now is the reason why ratings are really down.
I think, okay, well, how about this? If you make the fan base angry about the product, that's not good generally.
Not necessarily.
I hear you.
People love to hate things.
That's true, but they might not watch. Like, there's a lot of angst about like the carry rule, for instance. Right?
I think the thing we didn't talk about yet was how we consume content these days, and I would like to see how much NBA content is actually watched over social media, and if that's being put into the statistics. Because I think people don't have the attention span to watch full games anymore unless they go in live.
So, right. Well, okay. And that's okay. So now we got to figure out how to compare that because Twitter wasn't always a thing as it is now. So what you're saying is people might rely on highlights on Twitter real quick, keep them updated in the game.
I think people like highlights and trade buzz and drama more than the actual games these days.
Well, okay. So now you're talking about the ESPN factor and all those shows.
I'm not singling out any company, but I just feel like people love the things outside the actual game instead of the game itself.
Okay, because like
I feel like being like a real basketball guy that wants to watch a full basketball game, especially if it's a team that person is not a fan of, it's almost niche now.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's different because like with football, you can plan your whole week around it. You know, when the game's going to start, tailgating the whole thing. It's like it's an event. Whereas it comes fast and furious every night. There's 6-7 games, and if you have your one team, great. But then obviously, if your team isn't doing well or a small market, whatever, then you're going to have depressed ratings no matter what. Built on that because they're not going to have as much interest. So, I mean, I'm trying to think of like what captures our minds. I wonder what the ratings were last night for Mavericks Warriors. You had Clay against the Warriors. You had Luka and Steph against each other. Like, it was on NBA TV, which again, not everybody has. And I'm actually surprised when I talked to even some friends. Hey, go watch it. Like, I don't have NBA TV.
I wonder also if marquee East Coast games at night do better than marquee West Coast games at night because of the time factor.
Yeah, there was no question. Someone said that in the comments. Where did it go?
Yeah.
Somebody was like, yeah, the late night when you're on the East Coast or even the Midwest, it's a little bit tough. Now, that said, there's rarely more than like 2 games that start at 7:30 on the West Coast and on any given night. There's usually about 2 games.
Yeah, but when you're watching games from the East Coast, right? So it's
not a lot of, but it's not like a lot of games, but there's going to be 1 or 2 that you
right. Some games start at 10:30 our time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those are the games that start at 10:30. There'll be 1 or maybe 2 generally. And so they try and limit those, I guess, or however it plays out. But so that is a thing without question when you're trying to talk about live. But that's, I don't think I think that there's something else, because obviously, 10 years ago, that was still an issue, and the ratings were a lot higher.
If just from field study, when I talk to a lot of people, I'll always ask them, did you watch the full game? When they're talking about a game, they usually say, I watched a 10-minute clip on YouTube.
Right.
Is that being factored into ratings, TV ratings?
No, probably not. Like, yeah, shout out to Free Dawkins and those guys that do those too, right? They do this.
Free Dawkins is, they do.
He's a very valuable thing. And by the way, I know who Free Dawkins is. Ooh. Anyway, but an invaluable. I won't speak anymore. But he's an invaluable part of the ecosystem, because yes, they rely on that to figure it out, and it does help. I don't have time. I can go watch the 10-minute version myself and get at least a handle on what happened a little bit. Yeah. So that's probably why one reason is, like, the culture itself has turned into these quick, no one wants to sit down for 2.5 hours. But again, there's no denying that there is angst, there is ill will, there is bad feelings about the style of play that we have to kind of unpack. So,
well, that was a great episode right there. The thumbnail needs to be why are NBA ratings down, though. That's what the thumbnail should be in the picture, with like LeBron and Steph, like with like a face like this. Just my producer cap. Right. Just my producer cap coming on right now.
Thank you. Well, that might be what I'll call this video then, even though it's focusing on just the threes. But you know what? I think I probably need to do a bigger video that talks about fouls, talk about everything. But then what people are going to want is what can you do to fix it. But let's get to the threes, because we really haven't kind of pulled that apart yet. Although we have another super chat. Hang on, let me get to it. From the Godfather, Braun. Thank you so much, Braun. Great to see you. Combo's got it right. Where would you rank the NBA among the most engaged sports across social media? I'd assume it's fairly high next to soccer. Well, engaged. I mean, it's fan base related as well, right? You have certain teams that have no engagement.
I think this is right, though, and I think basketball dominates social media, in my opinion.
Now that's interesting. I really try and avoid the football stuff, which I think would be the only other one that's in the same realm. Maybe soccer.
I mean, don't you think people look for basketball highlights in general more than football highlights? I'm talking about the actual aesthetics of the highlight.
I don't know. I mean, a good football highlight's really great, right?
A dunk on and making somebody fall. What's the equivalent in football? I guess a hard hit. I guess so, right?
Yeah, if you're like falling backwards in the back of the end zone and you kind of catch it sprawled with your feet barely in the, that's
true. It's good. It's good.
There was one guy jumped over a tackler. I mean, that was crazy. I
don't know, man. I look at those Ja 360 layups.
But here's the thing: football ratings are much higher, and the social media aspect is less. Let's just pretend it is. I don't know if it is, but let's just say it's less engaging than the NBA. What does that say about things? What's more important?
How do we monetize short form content?
I guess you might say the NFL isn't doing a good enough job, or whoever, of sharing it, and maybe the NBA Twitter or whatever is better at that. But I don't know. I feel like we can't ignore the fact that there is this growing anger at the game itself. That you can't ignore this voice that's out there now about the way that it's played.
It could be mental contagion, mental contagia, or mental contagion. Which one?
The mob mentality.
Yeah. Mental contagion.
It might be, or it might not be. Either way, it's like, and the gist of what I hear about it's either we're going to talk about carrying. They don't want to call that, so I'm upset and I can't watch it. Although, imagine that they think that there'd be higher ratings if the whistle blew more for carries. Like, that's hard to believe that would be it, but that's what they'll say. The traveling thing is a big one. You hear it all the time. The foul calls, which if you want to say are maybe a little bit better, it might be a little bit tamped down this year. The ones that I had to go through last year with when they would quick release shots, and people are like, that's not a shot. When I'm like, no, that's immense skill. Haven't had that much. Maybe the players aren't doing as much, or whatever. People are accepting it either way, but that's still something. And the 3-point shooting, the style of play. Everyone wants to say it's the same everywhere across the board.
I gave you a lot of reasons. I got one more reason for you.
Okay.
The best team in the NBA is not very interesting. And I know they're not I think the Cavs are still number one in the East, but I mean, the team that just won the championship, people aren't that interested in. And they got even better because Porzingis is now healthy and Payton Pritchard took a leap, and Jason Tatum's playing really well. And Jaylen Brown's efficient, but there's just not like interest in it. It's not like the Chicago Bulls or the Warriors or any team like that. Not even close.
So that will be why the Celtics are boring, or why the Celtics are killing the ratings.
Why the Celtics are killing the NBA. That's how we really get
thrown out of the NBA.
That's how to really get the Celtics fans on their good side. Those Celtics fans are feisty. They'll get personal, man.
I'm going to write some of these down. Why the Celtics should be thrown out of the NBA. Just so you know, this is how YouTube works, man. You got to come up with that title. Let me get this one up. What about it? Why? I mean, they shoot more threes than anybody ever has. Is that what it is? Or is there a way to put a finger on it that easily?
No. I think we gave the B-Ball Breakdown live show community a lot of reasons. And I think it could be a combination of all, or maybe it's more some than others. It's definitely not only the three-point shooting. First of all, I think from what I heard Nate Duncan saying not too long ago, that there's the same amount of jump shots, just the spot-up shot, which Seth Partnow talks a lot about as well. It's just the mid-range spot-up is now stretched out to 3, but it's still the same amount.
Say it again.
The role players that take the spot up mid-range in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
It's basically very similar. Just the role players stretch it out to 3 now. And the league's best players are still getting in the mid-range a lot.
Oh, that's actually a good point. I mean, right. And as they should. It's funny because when we were lurching towards the 3-point era and you had these analytics guys saying they just got to take the 3 instead of the long 2. I said, you don't understand. That would take at least a whole summer of work training before you'd feel comfortable to do that. You can't just do it overnight. And we didn't understand that. And then here we are. It took a few years, took a whole generation to kind of develop that into their careers. And now, they're coming in right away as a role player just shooting threes. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, look, and they're training it now. Like, that's why you don't see the pump fake one dribble forward jump shot. You see the pump fake sidestep jump shot from 3.
Yeah, and then on top of that, those catch and shoot shooters like Kyle Korver are now putting the ball on the ground. They have ability to do that, which is really exciting. So some of those role players can now be playmakers as well.
That's the evolution of the game.
Person. So I'm excited about that because I know I would have felt really limited if all I was allowed to do. And you hear this from all those shooters in the back in the day in the NBA, and they were simply not allowed to do anything else but catch and shoot. And so that's, you never want to hear that as a player, especially if you can develop that skill and be good at it.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, that's the evolution of the game, right? That's
yeah. So here we are, and you're right. There's a lot of reasons, and I kind of still want to unpack the Celtics thing because it's an interesting conundrum of why. And I would agree with that, even on a sense of like whenever I've done Celtics content, it generally doesn't do that well. Like I know there's a lot of really impassioned Celtics fans out there, but I wonder if what the number is compared to like Lakers and the Warriors and the other teams that do much better. It's interesting to me. Really positive, glowing, video about this and on the Celtics, and it doesn't always get as much traction. It's curious. Do you have a feel for why that would be?
Well, maybe go the other way and say why the Celtics are boring. Why are the Celtics boring?
Okay, so let's do that. I mean, they shoot at 55% of their shots are threes. They hit a high clip, right? It's not like they're inefficient at them at all. They're impressive that way. But is that boring? Now here's the thing. When I show in this video about the Celtics and the Mavericks is they utilize the roll man, right? So they draw 2 roll man, kick, it's roll man, skip, one more, 3-corner 3, open splash, right? That should be exciting. Isn't that exciting to most fans to see that kind of movement and coordinated attack?
I don't know. When I was mentioning the I mean, I like that. I love ball movement. I think the Spurs implemented some of that. I think it's a very international way of playing basketball. But when I mentioned the teams that got a lot of excitement, they had guys like Steph Curry, like Kobe and Shaq, like Michael Jordan. Maybe the star power isn't powerful enough, if you will, on this Celtics team.
Oh, well, put a pin in the star power thing for a minute because that's another good one. But okay, when you see a multi-pass catch and shoot corner 3 that goes down, no one is going to say that's the problem with the NBA, right?
I got what you're saying. So you're basically saying the 3-point problem is a problem when it's not utilized in the right way.
Okay, well, let's figure this out. So we've kind of got like the 4-pass sequence with a cutter and a whatever to the corner 3. Love that. And no one's going to complain about that. Now, even the nail in the coffin last night was a Klay Thompson pick and pop for 3, which was kind of nice and interesting. And it was like, and by the way, had they rotated properly, it would have been one more to the corner for wide open 3. And again, probably can't argue with like that kind of, I know it's only a couple players involved, but there's a pass and there's whatever. So like maybe that isn't so bad. where we get into trouble in theory would be when a ball handler brings the ball up, dribbles it about 18 times in a row, and then just shoots a three without passing it. I wonder, wouldn't that be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing with Kirk Goldsberry going viral now. What was it? The Bulls versus another bad team, could have been the Wizards, that, them just shooting a whole bunch of bad threes, and they set like a record.
How did he claim they were bad?
Well, no, it was like the record of the most missed threes. I'm sure somebody,
right. But by the way, what if they were all corner threes off of 4 passes?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a different who's taking them, right? On those, yeah.
I mean, I tell the high school kids.
I don't think that was the case, though, when they were showing the highlights, right? That wasn't the case.
No, it wasn't. I mean, there's no way. And there was probably a bunch of off the dribble horrible threes, and they were contested, right?
Right. I think people's issue might be that people are taking Steph Curry threes when they're not even close to Steph Curry, when they're not even average 3-point shooters,
Okay. So now we're getting into somewhere. But again, how many of those are taken on a given night?
What, the Steph Curry bad three?
The Steph Curry bad three by the non.
I don't know. That would be. You got
to be someone who's below 35%, right? You get into the average, whatever. You can take a couple shots, right? So, how many? I mean, here's what I think. What I imagine, if we really boiled it down and looked at because for instance, Steph Curry took a shot. It was not open at all, deep in the corner, get fouled. They actually reversed the call, but he looked like he got fouled, and he nailed it, right? So there's a completely contested shot you'd say would be a terrible decision, and he made it. And so we get a little thrill. That's no one would complain about that, and you probably got to give him a few that he would make he'll make 30% of those. You know what I mean? So there are some, and then we're getting back to that star issue now where it's okay, Luka taking a step back might be more acceptable, even though he airballs those and he throws them off the backboard a lot, because he'll nail some of them, and that's exciting, and we have to give him some leeway. I think now you want to get into that part of the conversation where the 3-point shot mixed with the star player becomes a whole other animal.
Tell me more what you mean.
It's like, I hate that shot. It's terrible. I'm going to turn it off. But wait, Luka just took it. That was exciting. Steph Curry just took one. That was exciting. I don't hate that one because it's them. It's the star. Kevin Durant just came up and did a 6-dribble ISO, whatever.
There's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that. That's okay because it's Kevin Durant.
There's a lot of that.
When Jalen Green does it.
I think people actually in general disrespect a lot of NBA players that aren't named Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron. They think everybody. I mean, that's more of a casual fan though. They think everybody's not even good at basketball besides those guys. Right. There is some of that, but that's more probably casual fans that, switch from baseball to football to basketball. They watch all the sports. Why is this guy shooting that three? That guy might have shot 10,000 of the. That guy might have had 10,000 hours of experience with that. You don't know that just because they're not Steph Curry.
Well, that's true too. Now, I'll get to Euro Thunder. Thank you so much again for the second super chat. Really appreciate it. They say piracy websites have increased due to NBA prices to stream and ticket prices going up. For sure, ticket prices going up everywhere. You can't. I went to the Chargers game, and you can't. It would be like the one thing you could spend on all year long if you didn't have you weren't wealthy. I don't understand how anybody can go to these games like that regularly. It's way too expensive. So that's a problem, and that certainly with the streaming. So yeah, there's no question that has increased, and that has to affect the views. You might argue that they would never have watched the game anyway, so it's not going to hurt the ratings per se, but I think it does. There's no question. Now, that said, we can look at the ratings for the national TV games that are free on ABC, for instance, right? That happen every so often. Those are down as well, I have to imagine. And we need to look at those. Maybe someone can share that. They have them online. They can help us find that. But again, so we're kind of swirling around some of the idea of here, what's going on, because in reality, you're going to talk about the fouls. You're going to talk about the travels. You're going to talk about the threes. How many plays in a given game, I guess from both teams, we'll call it for both, actually occur that would trigger that response? I would say it's probably, if you're combining the threes, the travels, and the fouls, maybe it'd be less than 10 every game from both teams that would probably say, I can't watch this. Is that fair?
What do you mean?
Okay, a play happens in a game where that's a travel. I can't believe they didn't call that. I hate this. I'm turning it off. Right?
Oh, man.
That's what happened.
Well, maybe because people's attention spans are so fragmented, right? When you only had that one game on ABC, right? I mean, sorry, NBC back in the day, you couldn't go to any other basketball game. So it kind of goes back
off the topic. Stay focused for a second. You're proving the fact that we can't stay focused on this. What I'm asking is because remember, like I'm looking at this as a very practical matter. They see these plays, it makes them mad, and I go turn off the TV. You understand? Like there's a very clear progression here, right, of how this works. So how many of those plays have to happen until you get to the point where, okay, I don't like that, I'm mad, okay, but it's okay. And then, I don't like that, I'm even madder, but I'm still watching. And then at some point, there's a number, right? I think, where they say, that's it, I can't watch this anymore in any given game, let's just say. Well, how many of that does have to happen? And what percentage of those plays are out of the entire of all the plays? It's probably a tiny percentage. It's weird, right? So suddenly it's like it doesn't really happen as much as maybe everybody thinks in terms of the carries, the travels, the bad calls. But it resonates in their mind so much it gets magnified, and then they're turning it off. What makes me mad about the traveling stuff and the refereeing stuff is that oftentimes it's rooted in a fallacy that they don't understand the rule. The rule is wrong in their mind. And that's really terrible. That's tragic that they're going to turn off the game in general because of a false understanding of the game itself. That's really frustrating for me. Oh, I lost you. Where's your mic? Your mic's off now. Oh, no. Fix the mic. Stop pressing buttons. See, you're so distracted. You're pressing buttons, and then the mic goes off. My goodness gracious. Well, you know what? While you're doing that, let's go to the Drew Show.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can, but it's not the right mic, but I can hear you.
Okay. You sure?
Wait, I think tap that mic. Okay, that is your mic. You're good. Okay. But let's get to the Drew Show before this one gets too old. And thank you, Drew. It's great to see you. It's been a while since we've seen you. Great to have you back on the show, and really appreciate it. It took the NBA 40 years to make 23-foot 9-inch to be trivial. So let's move the three-point line back to 24-6 or 24-9. Save the game for the next 40 years. That's interesting. How many times did they actually move the line? They moved it that many times already? Well, if he wants to say from the invention of the game till they put the three-point line in, it wasn't 40 years. It was 1950. The NBA started in like 1950, and then they put the line in 79.
79, yeah.
So that's 30 years, right?
I know that because it was like Pistol Pete's last year. He went 10 for 15. Random fact.
But his point is still very valid. Moving the three-point line back.
Coach Nick doesn't like it, but I think it's a good idea because you think it won't affect anything.
Right. But is 23-9? That's not where. Is that where it is right now? Why do I feel like it's longer than that? Maybe that's right. To 24-6.
Wait, there was a time where they moved it in.
They did. Right? Probably 1 year or 2 years when they won the title the first year, right? The 96 title, 95-96. It didn't work, right? It ruined the spacing. So moving it in was not the answer, obviously. Moving it back, I guess would help get rid of the corner three altogether.
That changes the game entirely.
Because remember, I've explained why the corner three is a higher percentage generally, and it's not because it's a little bit closer.
They got to try it out in the G League first before they do this. That's what I think.
That's easy to do. Yeah. Now, it would probably benefit. It would make a guy like Steph Curry even more valuable if you could move it back because he can shoot from that far anyway, right? And suddenly it makes that less people are doing it. He becomes more valuable. Will it reduce the number of threes? No, but that would reduce the number of threes, right?
Yeah.
Would it?
Yeah, players that usually bigs that toe the line, they won't be shooting as many of them.
Okay, so especially if the corner threes go away, there will absolutely be less threes. Now, remember, the corner three isn't necessarily a higher percentage shot because it's closer. It's because it's the culmination of generally good ball movement and a catch and shoot, and that's usually open. Otherwise, you're not really shooting those. So that's why the corner is always a very, very valuable piece of real estate. So it's like, are you suddenly going to just not? You won't get corner shots anymore, right? You won't take those, will you? Like,
I mean, if you're wide open, yeah.
Part of the reason why we operate out of the corners is because you can get sprinting fast into handoffs and off of screens, right?
It'll create things we won't even realize unless we actually do it.
Right. So you'll still get into the corner to begin, but I don't know if it's going to be a destination for you then.
Dunker spot stuff will probably still be a destination,
Right. So that's a problem because if you eliminate the corner as a destination, then yes, the game will be changed in ways we can't even imagine because you won't have all those nice driving kick for corner shots. or you won't have as much. And so
Less,
that's the problem.
the spacing might look like the 90s again that you
Well,
were
you
complaining
probably
about.
would have a lot more of the drive, and then like the guys would have to rotate in the air and like fire it right back out to like the wing and the top more, and it'd be wild, But maybe the offense will adjust as well and start setting interesting screens up there on drives. Like you'll be driving while they're screening to get that, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And it just be radically different, which again is another problem. When the game is radically different, they don't want to watch it anymore, right? They're not coming along. It's like when the Beatles slowly from album to album, went from the mop top guys with the hair and all the same suits to psychedelic, right? But it wasn't from immediately from one to the next album. They slowly brought us along.
Yeah,
it might not be slow enough.
Yeah, it's one of the 48 laws of power talk about this. You can't make change too drastic in a short amount of time. I forgot which law that was.
I'm pretty much for that, except for like the civil rights movement. Like I don't feel like people need to wait for that one. But I hear you, and probably like it'd be nice if it was for like healthcare. Like we don't need to like slowly move those policies. Let's get those taken care of quickly. But I understand that there is a natural instinct to like rally against any kind of radical change very too quickly, and that's a problem because even if you're like me who doesn't necessarily mind change. The fact of the matter is that people are turning it off, right?
Yeah.
Changing too much. It's not what they wanted. It's not what it was when they were kids. And the nostalgia, by the way, for what it was like back in the day is powerful and completely built on a fallacy as well. Nobody wants the 90s. I went through that. Nobody wants that anymore. I'm telling you. Now, have we gone too far? Maybe. But, whatever this nostalgia is for what it used to be like, nobody wants the refs to call carries like they called back in the 50s. Nobody wants that.
And you think that's what it'll go back to if you eliminate the corner three?
Well, that's what people are screaming about in terms of a lot of the different changes that have happened, that they want to go back. Like it's not what I grew up with, right? And so obviously that means they want what they grew up with. They don't. Trust me. I've watched some of those games in full. It's hard. It's hard to watch those. All right, so let's get back to we have some more. Alan, thank you so much. Alan Tran, great to see you again, as always, in multiple tonight. Thank you so much. I like the Schroeder move for Golden State, but trading for a star now is bleak unless Golden State moves Wiggins and Draymond. This is the roster shrug. Is that what Schroeder is making? Do you know what his salary is? I can't believe that.
Random. I don't randomly know a Schroeder's salary, but
luckily we have the technology to scroll. No, that's not right. So he's making $13 million this year.
Yeah.
So what is it? How did I misunderstand that? I see. I think maybe it means they're going to trade for a star after the Schroeder deal.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Schroeder's a great move by them, though.
Yeah. It was cheap. They didn't have to give up much at all. And they need another guy that can do what Schroeder does. They need another guy that can kind of create off the dribble better, and he can shoot. Is he shooting well from three this year?
Also, he's a combo guard, which fits really well with Steph Curry, and he's a huge upgrade from Pods, who has been struggling.
Yeah, it's too bad because Pods has ability, can do it, but you're right. He's a non-factor from behind the line. And Schroeder's shooting. He shot 41 last year and 38.7 this year on high volume. So yeah, I think he'll get even easier shots now. So he
knows how to play read and react type basketball. We all know about FIBA
Right.
Schroeder. He's one of the best in international play. And then you want a guy with Steph Curry that doesn't have to play a pure point guard role, and he doesn't have to play a pure PG role, which Schroeder is. He complements Steph Curry really well. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball.
Yeah. You want to shoot? Can we? Schroeder, not Schroeder. Schroeder. Let's say it with me.
I mean, everybody knows who I'm talking about.
I know, but say it right. I don't want to call you Cambo, do I? So anyhow, let's talk about him. Not only that, but here's what you have to watch for. Draymond is an intense person. He can get on his teammates, right? Sometimes too much. Safe to say.
Yeah.
Schroeder is a lot like that. So you now have two players who could be a-holes. Very dangerous chemistry possibilities here.
I think there's been teams with multiple a-holes that have been really good. No.
Yeah, but this one is you got to. There's vibes. You got to be protective of a little bit. So
what's going on in LA? That's a good question.
You want about the Lakers?
What are you hearing? That's what I want to know. What are you hearing?
I mean, I'm not hearing anything really, except the big one is that, see what Ham had to work with, and it's the same roster as and it's probably a good argument for that. Yeah. I mean, I think really what it is that LeBron is not as good as everyone thinks he wants him to be because he's old. Now, he looked pretty good last night.
He took a nice rest.
Yeah, but how often can you give him a week off to do that? He looked good. I mean, it's interesting. He doesn't get up off the ground as high as he used to, but he's powerful and he had a lot of energy. He was making plays on both ends.
Got good lift on it. Got good lift on his jump.
Yeah, and they're in business, but without that, then AD isn't enough. Unfortunately, he's not a creator necessarily as much. But they did take away the Grizzlies right off the bat, and so that was good. But do we finish the Schroeder thing? So
I like it.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if there's any other moves they're going to be able to make like that either. It's tough. No one likes to make these trades in the middle of the year. But yeah, there's no question he can create shots. And by the way, you like dogs. You like guys who are going to get in there and get in people's faces and get aggressive and get intense and get the rest of the team to do that, right? Hopefully the teammates will coalesce around that and not tune him out. I think Schroeder has seen that happen to him in the past where he's sort of turned a lot of teammates off. But there's no denying he's got a lot of ability and he's tested. He knows how to perform in the clutch.
Yeah, that guy could play, man. He's a good player. He's closer to me. He's closer to an all-star than to an average player. Like, I think he's really good. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go to Euro Thunder. Oh, my goodness. Thanks so much again, Euro Thunder. Really, really so generous with you. End the soft whistle era and allow dunk celebrations. I'd go even further and mic up stars that trash talk like Draymond. Today, NBA is sterile. They mic them up. I mean, I know I've heard on the mic with Draymond.
Very selective on what they.
I mean, yeah, and that would never change anyway. It wouldn't. So,
I don't know. To Euro Thunder's point, it could change if that's what's going to bring in ratings.
Yeah, I guess. So just bleep it instead of just not show it at all.
I think when you're playing pickup basketball. When is the time that everybody is most engaged watching that game when they have next? When two people are talking trash. So I think Euro Thunder's point is great, actually. Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I see a question about if we're going to talk about Mavs Warriors. I mean, I kind of feel like we have been in the sort of the context of what that game represents, in terms of why people are turning it off, just to answer that question. But, the soft whistle era perhaps is ending. We've had fits and starts over the last several years where they were allowing it, not allowing it, whatever. I mean, heck, remember when they started calling carries?
Yep.
That was like 3 years ago? That was great. And then they stopped again.
Yeah, they always start and stop things with the officiating.
When do they start up again? They haven't really started it up again, really. I don't think.
I said start, stop. It just stopped.
Stopped, right? It was like, and I think everyone liked it. I think when they first let playoff rules in the regular season a couple of years ago, we were all shocked because guys were going to the basket and like there was no whistle. We didn't know what to do. But I think we all pleasantly were surprised. And like again, they kind of went away from that. Maybe we're a little bit closer to that than we were before. But I would agree that you got to let the defense be able to play a little bit more. So obviously, what's happened is overall arching idea is that it's too much scoring based. Right, we've unleashed it to get as much scoring because that's what we thought we all wanted, and it's gone too far. It's too much scoring, right? Is that what we're all saying basically overall?
Well, then it's going to get back to the reason they brought the 3-point line in back in the 90s because then there wasn't enough scoring. So I guess you have to find a happy balance. But every trend has a tipping point.
But they also allowed so much physicality that defense could do so much. That's also the defenses were just quote unquote too good, right? So that was part of it as well. So
were they really that good?
I mean, you didn't see the kind of really creative rotations and zone stuff because you couldn't do it you could back then with their illegal defense rules. So that was part of it.
I believe, yes, there was guys like Muggsy Bogues that were like ridiculous, defenders. But on average, I didn't see guys like fighting over screens like they do today. It was just
Michael Cooper was great at that and stuff. So you had it. But I hear you. And the whole thing about screening and fighting over screens and how those were called is different than it is now. And
Mark Eden wasn't hedging and recovering.
No, he was not. No, but he wasn't dropping either. I got to go watch Mark Eden because the drop coverage is a newer thing in the 2010, 2009.
You could go do that. You could go watch Mark Eden.
Yeah,
Coach
I might have to look. Maybe they did drop and we didn't even notice.
And rest in peace. I think he passed, right? Rest in peace.
Yeah, a little while ago. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Mark.
So anyhow, I see that. Now, by the way, the other thing that I think would have more grist in terms of what's wrong with the game is everyone's playing the same. And that actually is kind of true. Now, as a coach, I like what the 5-out does. You get a lot of handoffs, backdoors, but in the pick and rolls, you get movement, you get cutting. It's like fun, and we're getting cutting more now all of a sudden, which is great. Mm-hmm. But it does look similar. Everyone wants to start with a handoff at the wing, and then reverse, and then from there maybe a ball screen, maybe a back screen. You know what I mean? So there is some sort of notion that it is similar. You know what? Who might be part of the problem is me.
Figured it out. After all this time, we've went 50 minutes to figure out why NBA ratings are down, and it's all been because of Coach Nick.
You know why? Here's the take. Before me and others, the average IQ of the average fan IQ of basketball was pretty low. People didn't know about horns. They didn't know about how pick and rolls work. I
love horns.
Yeah. So a whole new generation of people came up, educated better on the game. Is that fair to say?
Very fair, Coach Nick.
Okay. So now they have a lot more information. They do understand the game better. We're still struggling with the rules part and the travel and all that stuff. I'm still trying to help on that. But so now it's interesting that they can inherently understand this is the same offense and they're running the same thing over and over again. And what I liked before was when the Jazz ran this kind of stuff, and then the Bulls would run this, and then we'd have the Wizards would do this, and then what I mean. There were distinct offenses and attack styles. The Nuggets, all those years were much different than everybody else. So it's that could be part of it. That might be the biggest part of it. What do you think?
That it was you're the reason why NBA ratings are down.
Well, that the average IQ of the average fan is much higher now and is so discerning that they're able to see what they wouldn't have seen before, which is that the offenses are the same. So it's really about the offenses the same, but the reason is because of people like me.
I think, I think you're onto something.
Yeah, there might be something like that. I didn't call my audience dumb. I want to say before I started my channel, the average fan watched these games and they didn't know. That's why I started the channel. It's because in 2009, when the Celtics and the Bulls were playing and there was the epic 7-game series, there's so many mistakes being made and no one was seeing it, right? So I'm like, we got to understand this isn't really as epic and great as it is, we see. So it's in a weird negative way I started the whole thing. But that was what I tapped into. People wanted to come watch and learn more about the game, understand it better. That was a big yearning. Well, guess what? We've gotten there. Everyone understands it better now for whatever reason. I think I contributed to that. And so as a result, the audience now needs something better, and so it's I watch the games with my wife. She has no idea what's going on. It just looks like whatever. Every once in a while she figures something out, right? But she's a good example of someone that doesn't know the game, doesn't understand it. The game doesn't, it's just a bunch of people moving around. But when you really understand how to watch the game and you start watching off-ball movement and then patterns and whatever, it changes your taste and it changes what you might want. And so that might be part of it, I think, 50 minutes into our show. But Combo, the show must go on. It must go off. I got to get to my next show and then all sorts of things. A game I got to get to later on today. So, but great conversation.
Amazing conversation.
One we could have even more of.
Yeah, we gave people 10 reasons why NBA ratings could be down. So we have to make that the thumbnail, but I guess we can't. It's too late, right?
No, the thumbnails can be changed.
Yeah. Steph Curry and LeBron. Oh, you're so busy today, though. But Steph Curry and LeBron like this. And then why NBA ratings are down.
Well, if I do that, okay, I got to do another video for that, a real video. All right. But stay tuned for my video coming up about the Mavericks and
why don't you put some of that conversation in a video? The first 20 minutes
of this conversation?
Yeah, it was really good, actually.
Make that video way long. I get worried people aren't going to watch it then.
No, you take the best parts of it, Coach Nick.
All right.
It's just an idea. You don't have to listen to me. It's just an idea. I just have my producer cap on.
That is, it's interesting. You're all about repurposing content, aren't you?
I'm all about whatever makes us better, Coach Nick.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you so much, Combo, for being on here. Thank you all for being part of the super chats. I feel like I should quickly check to make sure we got to everybody because I would hate to miss.
Thank you for the super chats. We appreciate you.
Yes. So Euro Thunder, Braun, the Drew Show, Alan, and Euro Thunder a couple times. Thank you so much for that. And thank you all for being part of this very large audience today on the show. We're here every Monday, so don't forget to join us when we're here.
What's a good salute? Like this? A salute?
A salute, yeah. I don't know, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
You know, one of these. And we'll be back again on Monday, if not earlier. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Combo?
Yes, sir.